Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to stream level 1 options data via the Charles Schwab API. In order to get this to work, we're going to need 3 scripts. The script on the screen contains all the functions and wrappers related to the Charles Schwab API. Whenever I need access to this API, I just source this script and it'll load up all these functions along with my access token, my app key, and the secret code as well. What we need from the script is your current access token along with a function called get user preferences. Now this function doesn't have any parameters. All we do is send a get request via this URL and it'll return all the streamer information that we need for the other 2 scripts. So as you see, we're just going to pass in this URL, make sure that our access token is still valid. If the page status code is 200, we're going to go ahead and extract all the contents, which essentially just contains your accounts, the streamer info such as the URL and some offers which need to get passed into our request for streaming. Otherwise, it'll just return an error stating what that error was. So once you have that, we'll go to the second script. And at the very top here, we're going to require these packages, load up all of our functions from the Trader API script, and here's where we actually request our user preferences. Now, in order for us to use the streamer, we need some JSON blocks to log in, log out, and also to make requests. And as you see, it's pretty simple for the login and logout blocks. We just need to pass in a request ID, which can be a random number. The service will be admin for both. The command will be either to log in or log out. We also need to pass in our customer ID and our Coral ID, which can be found in the streamer info. Our authorization is our current access token. The client channel and client function ID are coming from the streamer info, and we don't need to send any parameters when we log out. Now that'll just get us to log in or log out, but we need to have some sort of functions to request information from the streamer service. To stream level 1 options, we're going to go to our first function where we just pass in the root symbol for a stock or ETF, an expiration, the option type, which can be a call, put, or both, and the strikes that we want to request data for. So I have some examples here. Now, depending on the parameters that we use, it'll go through a series of checks. It'll return a vector of option symbols the way this API wants them in. Now this just gets us the option symbols that we want, but we need to build some JSON blocks or instructions to subscribe to this data. So this is where we use our second function, and we're just going to pass in the symbols and the command, which can be subscribe, unsubscribe, add, or view. So if we open up this function here, if we just insert one symbol, it'll return that symbol. Otherwise, it's going to create one long vector or one string of all the option symbols that we pass in, separated by a comma. To request level 1 data for the options, similar to our login and logout blocks, we're going to pass in our request ID. The service will be level 1 options. The command gets passed in. The customer ID and Coral ID come from our streamer info. Now for the parameters, we need to pass in the keys and the fields. So for the keys, these will just be our symbols. For the fields, we're going to request all 66. So please take a look at the documentation if you don't need all 56. Once we built our JSON block, it'll just go ahead and return it. All the option data that we get from the streamer will get saved in a file folder in our working directory. So we need to build a function to extract that information back into RStudio. So I built this third function to do just that. And again, we have no parameters. And what we're going to do is we're going to list all the files inside of that folder, and it's going to run through a series of checks and return only the messages that we have data for, and it'll get returned as a data frame. So if we open up this lapply, it's going to go through each message. If it has data, we want to extract it. And again, we're going to rename all the fields. So for all 56 fields, we're going to replace it with the proper name. Now this takes up the majority of the function. If the message we get back doesn't have any data, we're just going to go ahead and remove it. And since we're going to make multiple requests, this will be useful as we don't need to reevaluate the messages that we don't have any data for. So those are all the functions that we need. Now if we go to our last script, we're going to start off by sourcing all of our functions from this previous script. It's going to create a folder called level 1 options dump inside of your working directory if it doesn't exist. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pass in our URL to connect to the streamer service via the streamer info. We're going to try and connect, and on every message we want to send all that data to our level 1 options dump folder. Now inside of this paste, we have a unique identifier for each of the messages, which is just using the current timestamp. If you don't save these using a unique name, the data will get overwritten. Now when the streamer connects, we want to make sure we send our login block, and on close, we're going to send our logout block to stop receiving messages from the streamer service. Now we're going to subscribe to the level 1 options, but the first thing we need is to build all of our option symbols. So we're going to use that function from the previous script, and we're going to pass in SPY as our root symbol. The expiration will be 530. I want to get data for both calls and puts. for these 3 strikes, and we're going to pass that into our second function to build the JSON block. So we're going to pass in the symbols, and our command will be to subscribe. So this will return a JSON block here. We want to make sure that we're connected to the streamer. So it'll go ahead and print the ready state. If the connection is 1, then go ahead and send that JSON block. Now we can also add symbols. So I'm going to go ahead and add an additional subscription for the queues, same expiration, and I want the 510 strike on the call side. We're going to build the JSON block for that, and the command will be to add, and we're going to send that as well. So let's go ahead and run everything up to line 55. Now, briefly after you run it, if you go and check in your folder, you'll see that we have started receiving messages for our option data. Now, here's where we're going to use our third function to extract all the messages and only keep the messages that we have data for. So let's go ahead and run that. Now in RStudio, if you go to all data, we have 59 total columns. So we requested 56, but in addition to that, it'll add the key, whether it's delayed or not, and the asset main type. And if you take a look at the description, we have 3 puts and 3 calls for SPY as we requested, along with the call strike for the queues as well. So any little change that happens for these particular strikes, it'll get recorded and get sent back to us. So we can isolate any of these to check. So here I'm just going to be pasting the key. So as you see for this particular strike, the first message retrieves basically all the information for all the fields and then any changes thereafter. So on the second row, we see that our ask price changed by a penny. So that data got sent back to us along with the intrinsic value, the bid and ask sizes, and it looks like that was the only change, along with the underlying price, the mark price, the quote time, there was no change in trade time, the percentage change, and the mark price percentage change as well. So there's additional columns that you could search through as well, since we requested all 56 fields. So if we go back to all the data, we see that we have 265 rows. But if we go back to our script here and we run line 60 again, we click on all data, now we have 1900 different rows. So the data comes in pretty quickly. So from here you can manipulate the data as you wish. You can still work out of RStudio, but if you want to finally just close the streamer, you would have to run line 65 to 68. And when we run that, it'll go ahead and close the streamer service, and we're going to stop receiving messages, but you're still going to have access to all the data inside of your folder. But that's pretty much it, guys. Please check out my other tutorials on the streamer service if you're interested in returning chart data on a minute basis for both futures and equities, along with level 1 data for options on futures and level 1 data for futures as well. Well guys, this concludes the video. I hope it was useful information. I'll leave a link down in the description area to my Patreon where you can find these 3 scripts. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.